Ruth Patterson, who's a professor at the UCSD Department of Family Medicine and Public Health and leader of the Cancer Prevention Program at Morse Cancer Center at UCSD. I am very interested in some of the research that you have been doing for the past few years and ongoing in terms of breast cancer risk and breast cancer, increased breast cancer recurrence.
So our research seems to show that two things. One, we see our biggest reductions in breast cancer, for instance, recurrence, with at least 13 hours of fast. And we really believe that fast needs to start around 7, maybe to 8 p.m. at night. And the whole circadian rhythm concept is the idea that, as you mentioned, the master clock is trained to light. It responds to light. So the master clock's getting the signal, let's say in the evening, you're done. But if you're eating, the peripheral clocks, like in your liver, are going, no, we're waking up, we're getting energy. And we believe that when those two clocks are out of sync, that itself leads to some type of metabolic dysregulation. Evolved to eat during the day when we're out getting our food, and then fast at night when we're in a rest state. But now with, modern lighting and with modern lifestyles and longer and longer work weeks, our meal patterns less and less resemble the way we evolved to eat. And we believe that it's very metabolically detrimental to eat a lot of energy and then right away lay down. What are you doing? You're laying down. You don't need to have all that energy on board and all that metabolism going on, when actually you should be in a fasting catabolic state.
So do you mind talking about that study for a little bit?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. So this was a study in about 2,500 breast cancer survivors, and they completed over about 7.5 years of follow-up. They completed many food records, right? So we collected all this information about what they ate. But then more recently, when this hypothesis came out, we went and dug up all their food records and said, well, how about if we don't care what you ate, but we just care about when you ate it? So we re-entered all the data as far as when they started to eat, when they stopped, how long their fasting interval was, how much they ate at night, and then reanalyzed that data. And that's where we found that it seemed, at least in this sample of women, that the cut point of 13 hours reduced their risk of breast cancer recurrence by about 40%. It also reduced the risk of mortality by about 20%, or a little more than that, but that was not statistically significant. But it was just trending in the same direction. It's possible, because we do believe although my area of research is breast cancer, we actually believe this dietary pattern could have really positive effects on other diseases and conditions, including type 2 diabetes or fatty liver, NAFLD, also with acid reflux. The first thing they tell you is try to sit up when you go to bed, don't eat a big meal. So that, which often leads to esophageal cancer. So we actually feel it can have a positive impact on many aspects of metabolism, not just cancer. It's just that we're very interested in teasing out its impact on cancer, regardless of what you eat, controlled for whether you're overweight or not. Wow. What's been harder for us to identify is exact types of foods that could reduce risk. And in fact, we've not really had a lot of success in identifying individual foods or individual nutrients that seem to make a difference. Although I think there's more acceptance now of the idea that an entire dietary pattern, let's say the Mediterranean dietary pattern, may, influence risk over decades. So I would say those are probably the top concerns, is diet quality, obesity, physical activity. Those are the things, and even tobacco can increases breast cancer risk. So there's many things individual women can do. A long stretch of time, and there might be some improvements in gut rest or the microbiome. Like we don't think that your GI tract also was meant to have food constantly in there, you know. So we think that it's important to have a long stretch of gut rest, but that gut rest happens at night, starting fairly early, 7 or 8 p.m., and then 13 hours after that. So it's both of those things, and either one is not sufficient.
I was reading, I think maybe the American Cancer Association had published some statistics on how obesity can increase the risk of breast cancer by twofold. So I know when I think, you know, of lifestyle factors that are modifiable and that are actually known to increase breast cancer risk, obesity comes to mind.
Sure. Obesity is definitely one of the big ones, and also physical activity. More recently, we've become aware of the importance of physical activity. Right.
Because it's really not that difficult to, I think it's much easier for people to make a modifiable change of just stopping stop eating after 7 p.m. versus eat all your vegetables, stop eating your cake. I mean, people should do that, but
yes, I still think diet quality matters, but we've done some pilot studies with women adopting a longer nightly fasting interval. And those studies have been amazing in terms of how simple it was for women to do it. We actually had a little app that I used, and they would text us, starting my fast, and then we'd text back saying, great, don't forget, don't eat again before 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. You know, and so many participants said, you know, I never understood percent energy from fat. It was always so confusing to me. It made me just feel stupid. I didn't even know how to do it, but I just got this. In 5 minutes, I got this. I could do it. And self-report ways, they reported often sleeping better. And we did it with a group of Latino women, Latinas, in South Bay, and they were particularly positive about it. They said, you know, in my family, if I tried to change up our entire way we eat, sometimes my family members weren't that positive about that. Where's our favorite foods? And she goes, but this, I could do it right away. It was really simple, and it didn't affect the family or our food ways. So it was very easy for me to do within our family without disrupting all of our family behaviors. They were very positive. And often even reported, I felt so proud of myself. Okay, finally I'm doing something. I feel better. Well, I'm going to start walking too. You know, that kind of self-efficacy kind of spread to other health behaviors, which is in our breast cancer survivor study. We definitely saw an improvement in hours of sleep per night when people had a longer fasting duration. And, you know, bad sleep can also affect biomarkers, and it's its own risk. Right. So that might be partially, you know, it's partially working through direct metabolic effect, but it might be working through other behaviors too. But improving sleep and getting more sleep could also help regulate your metabolism and kind of feed into the positive impacts. Similarly, it's very interesting, but in several mouse studies, they've shown big improvements in spontaneous activity when they're put on this, when they're not on this fasting regimen. We don't necessarily think that if women or humans adopt a prolonged nightly fast, they're going to start working out at the gym, but there might be some more subtle effects on spontaneous activity, which frankly is the majority of the physical activity most people have, is just spontaneous, everyday, normal activity. So, the animal studies lead us to believe it can have several behavioral impacts in addition to the direct metabolic impact.
Yeah, great. So these women were being more compliant, I mean, which is
Well, they felt successful instead of feeling like a
Right.
failure, right?
Right.
You know, writing down everything you eat, running up the calories, you know,
Yeah.
you only can do that for a couple of days before you just burn out in the entire exercise. So you feel like, oh, I can't do it. You know, where this, they're like, I can do this.
If you want to talk about maybe the top ones.
Sure. You know, BRCA1 and 2, if you have that gene, you know, polymorphism, that's a pretty special case. And those women are at very high risk of breast cancer and recurrence. And it's hard to know for that small percentage of women how much lifestyle matters. But again, they're a special case. Majority of cancers are just sporadic. We think that less than 5% overall of breast cancers are the result of genetic factors. And more like 65 to 75% are the result of lifestyle factors, including obesity, diet, physical activity, and smoking. And alcohol, we think maybe, for breast cancer. So those are all things you can modify. So the idea that you're doomed by your genetics couldn't be more wrong. For the vast majority of women, it is your lifestyle choices that will make the biggest difference in your risk, which is not the same thing as saying you're to blame, because a lot of cancers are sporadic, but that there are things you can do to reduce your personal risk a lot.
Yeah.
So we think it's incredibly, some of the value is the simple feasibility of it. People can understand it and they can generally implement it. Now, we don't think it necessarily is going to have huge impacts on weight. Like you're probably not going to lose 50 pounds by just making over a month lost about a kilogram or about a little over 2 pounds. So we did see a modest weight loss. That's very modest. But even the mice studies that Dr. Panda does also tend to suggest that the impacts may be independent. Like it just helps you regardless of whether you lose weight. And even a small amount of weight. Recently, there was a study that seemed to show like they saw huge improvements in metabolic health in the first 5% of weight loss. And then they said if you looked at 5 to 10% of weight loss, it's like it flattened out. There wasn't, it isn't like a linear thing. So it looks like even modest weight loss can really improve your metabolic health. So I think there's this perception that, well, if I don't get to model skinny, there's no point in even trying. And I think that's a really wrong way of looking at weight loss. 5% weight loss could really make a difference.
5% of your
5% and keep it, keep it off. And maybe in a year or two, you might go, well, maybe I'll lose another 5%. But the idea that there's like some very linear thing going on, I'm not sure the data really support that. So even modest weight loss, work on the quality of your diet, work on the time of your diet, get some physical activity, please. Avoid long periods of sedentary behavior. All those things combined, good sleep, and good food choices, I think that's the total combination of things is the best thing you can work toward, and just make it a lifestyle to always be working on improving those things as your whole life.
This here's a CWM production.